You got the supervisors on, Tammy? Harley looked so mean. The way he was looking at in the camera. Oh, thank you. What is she?
Shower, kudos to you again. Oh, Pam never saw it.
I'm sure she took credit. Morning. Call the Board of Supervisors for Dubuque County into session for Monday, July 12th, 2021 at 9 a.m. We are both in the board chambers at the courthouse, and we are also via Zoom. At this time, we would welcome any comment from the public about matters that are on the agenda. You can go to the podium if you're personally present. In Zoom, the virtual world, you would raise your hand. In the Zoom function, you can also put a comment in chat or enable your video and give a wave. So we'll hold a minute to see if we have any member of the public who would like to address the board. We don't have anyone here in the boardroom, but I know I was contacted by a citizen who thought they may be present. Just waiting another moment to see if anyone logs on. I don't see anything, Dawn, do you? No. All right, very good. Well, we will, there's another time in our agenda where the public may comment, and that's at the end of our meeting. So we'll begin at this time with our formal agenda. First item on the agenda would always be proclamations, and we do not have one today. Second are the minutes of the meeting of July 6th and 7th. Comment, corrections?
I didn't see anything. I'd move to approve the minutes as presented.
And I will second that.
Motion is second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Consent items. We have 3 revenue reports, one from the auditor, the recorder, and the sheriff.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
I will second.
Motion is second to approve the consent items. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Next is the procurement procedures, and we do not have any pending at this time. For public hearings, we had 3 that are on our published agenda, but we don't believe that there was adequate public notice, so we will republish, and they are set for what date do we think is going to be the anticipated date for these? July 20th.
That's June calendar.
So July 26th, which is an evening meeting. So these public hearings on these rezoning requests would be held at 5 in the evening. 5:30. 5:30. There you go, 5:30 on July 26th. And I don't believe we need to do a motion on that. Next is an approval of Platts. I believe our zoning administrator is with us via Zoom. Tammy, are you present, and can you walk us through this?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Okay, so this is the plat for North Fork Macoka River, and it's a final plat. The property is owned by Martin and Mary Lango and Jerome and Julie Reneker, and it is located 1.14 miles east of the city of Luxembourg along Route 52 North with a total of 72.16 acres surveyed. The property is zoned A1 agricultural and A2 agricultural residential. The agricultural residential was approved on zoning case number 030821, and that was to rezone 2.73 acres. The purpose of this plat is to separate the existing home from the crop ground. The survey creates 2 lots. Lot 1 is a total of 2.73 acres surveyed with a home and buildings, and it will remain in current ownership. Lot 2 is a total of 69.43 acres surveyed, and it will remain in current ownership and agricultural use. Lot 1 will use an existing residential access off of Route 52 north, and Lot 2 will have access off the adjoining land in common ownership. There were no additions or corrections required for the plat, and the mortgage holder's acknowledgement is signed and attached, and some of the signatures are over 60 days old, and they included the surveyor, February 23rd of 2021, engineer, March 16th, 2021, Platts officer, March 16th, 2021, owner's consent, 2021, county planning and zoning, March 16th, 2021, city of Luxembourg, March 1st, 2021, County Treasurer, May 11th, 2021, Attorney's Opinion, May 18th of 2021, and the County Assessor, March 16th of 2021. This plat's been reviewed by myself as Platts officer, has all the required signatures. I respectfully recommend approval. So this is a follow-up to a zoning case, and now they're doing the separation of the property so that they can get the ownership correct.
Boy, hit that right in time.
Does anybody have any questions for me?
I have nothing.
I have nothing at this time. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the resolution?
I would make a motion to approve the final plat of North Fork Macoka Rivers subdivision.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution of the final plat of North Fork Macoka River subplat 2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Next are action items. The first is hiring of deputies, assistants, and clerks. Does anyone have any questions?
The Director of Food Services, is that just a replacement or?
That is correct. It's a replacement. They had a resignation, so that is filling that budgeted position. And then in the recorder's office, this is the temporary part-time, kind of as needed for FY22 only.
I make a motion to approve the resolution for the hiring of deputies and assistants and clerks.
And I will second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Next is back to our Urban County Coalition resolution to authorize the funding of $25,000 for fiscal year 22. Those folks are going to be with us later this morning for a work session. Does anyone wish to table until that time?
I will make a motion to table.
I will second.
Motion and second to table until later this morning. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. All right. Next, we have the approval of county vehicle. We basically have two administrative policies that are going to come before us. Dawn, I'll ask you to give the context. I know you provided a memo in the packet, and I appreciate that greatly.
So we actually started this before our new auditor, but then when he came on board, we had asked him to look at our policies. With the county vehicles one, that was an update to our policy. We wanted to update it to our current practices. And also we had, when we had some new staff over in the auditor's office, they indicated that we have some taxability guidelines from the IRS that we need to apply to just a couple vehicles and employees. But we wanted to also update our policy to capture that, as well as the cell phone. That is a new policy. And so, again, we wanted to be able to capture our current practices and then any taxability for stipends, and also provide departments guidelines for the use of, for issuing take-home vehicles. We have some criteria built in there. And then also for cell phone stipends, we have some criteria that departments can use to determine if an employee would qualify for a stipend, a cell phone stipend. So these have been reviewed with the department head and elected officials team several times. And so all of their feedback and comments are incorporated in the two policies that are presented. So I recommend approval for both of these.
I would just offer maybe to my colleague, Supervisor Potoff, I know the cell phone was a big topic in a budget
Only 50 subs per
session
restaurant,
2 years ago.
period.
10
10 a.m.
Take them
to
one at
noon.
a time,
Yes,
Vehicle
yes,
first?
yes, yes.
because I have comments as well on the.
Okay, so
cell
let's
phone.
start with the vehicles. I don't know that we've aggressively addressed that in the past, but go ahead with vehicles.
I'm fine with the vehicles.
I'd make a motion to approve the resolution for the use of county vehicles administrative policy.
And I will second that.
Motion is second to approve the county vehicles administrative policy. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Next is the resolution regarding county cell phone administrative policy. Open to questions.
The biggest one I had that maybe you can address is the stipend amount is not listed and doesn't seem to be uniformed. Can you give me some guidance on that?
So the policy is that the Board of Supervisors, previously, it was just determined by the department, and we felt that that was better placed to be determined by the Board of Supervisors. So we applied a provision in there that each year during the budget cycle, that you as a Board of Supervisors would determine that. We currently have two different levels of stipends. We have a $40 per month stipend, and we also have a $30 per month. The $30 per month stipend only applies to our medical examiners. And at that time, when it was discussed, they are on call. They do a rotating on call, so they are not permanent full-time employees. So we felt that that should be reduced some to reflect that they are just on a rotating on-call basis. They take a week at a time, so they're not on call every week, and we didn't feel that it should be compensated as such then for that.
So the concept is we would have one level of stipends, $1 amount, and the supervisors will set that today, or some still confused about what is the dollar amount of the stipend?
Right now, it is $40 for the full-time employees, and the medical examiners is $30. There's no reason why we would need to divert from that and have one. That would just be at your discretion. Again, we just recognized that there were two levels, with the full-time staff and then just a rotating on-call staff, in which we would be expecting them to use their cell phones for just that 1 week every, I think, 5 or 6 weeks they are on call.
Okay. So the plan would be at next budget cycle, we would set the stipend amount for the next fiscal year.
Correct. That would be the practice going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And why do we want to change the medical examiner's expectation now?
With the stipend,
Yes.
I'm not asking you to. We're continuing with the $30 per month, but that could be a discussion. You can do that at any time. We just built into the policy that if you wish to you have an opportunity to examine it every year during the budget cycle. We thought that was the most appropriate time.
Is $30 their current stipend?
That is correct.
And we're not making a change to that?
Not by approving this policy, no.
That's right.
Yeah.
I didn't see any dollar amounts
Nope.
related to the stipends in this policy, and that was my question.
Yeah,
So you've
instead of
answered that.
updating the policy every year, we just thought we would put that as part of the budget cycle.
Occasionally with omissions comes confusion.
And
But I get it now.
And we have had robust discussion in the past about cell phones, who gets them, why they get them. That's not to shortcut any of your questions, but there's been a couple of years of background work, so.
I'm familiar with the sheriff's office, but obviously mine was paid for because I was on call 24/7. Upper, management all had, so.
Bet you that was fun.
Yeah.
On call 24/7.
You don't miss that?
No.
From the retirement?
It still rings a lot, trust me.
Is it not 24/7 now?
Oh, well.
I think it's pretty close to that.
Mine's not. I have sleep mode. Except for my favorites, and 97,000 people are not on my favorite list. Any conversation, Dawn, about consolidation within plan and providers? So I know that we have Verizon, US Cellular, probably have AT&T accounts. Any discussion related to that you can share?
I have had discussion with the auditor, because currently each department contracts with cell phone companies, and so we have discussed that. We haven't dove into it a lot, because I think there's even departments who have both US Cellular and Verizon for various reasons. So that is definitely something we could look into, because we have quite a few cell phones that we pay for. So we can, I think that would be something the auditor and I would take a look at.
I didn't see any mention in the policy related to moving towards that, or that's a desired approach. And so that's something to be discussed at a later date.
Yes, I would think so, because we have not approached the department heads with that idea either. Because right now, they manage their own cell phone programs. They do all the management of issuing those to employees, and so we would want to work with that team to figure out how to move forward with
Yeah,
that.
and the reason I ask, hopefully, that we become more efficient and get better savings.
Yeah.
By having a common carrier, maybe still having a couple outliers just in case one carrier would go down. But that would be something to look at.
Okay.
Those are my questions.
I know at the sheriff's office, well, Captain Schneider was always ahead of it, and yearly he was, you know, going to the different entities, and whichever was the cheapest, basically, with the best service, is how we did it. It wasn't, nothing guaranteed that, you know, US Cellular or whatever was gonna get it. It always went by price, so.
Anyone interested in making a motion to approve this new policy?
I'll make a motion to approve the, cell phone policy for the
And I
county.
will second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution approving the Dubuque County cell phone administrative policy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Our next resolution concerns the fiscal year 22 county substance abuse prevention grant amendment.
I recall this being on our agenda a couple weeks ago. Is any,
I don't see the sheriff on here, but I can provide some feedback. Due to COVID, what you had seen previously just a few weeks ago on your agenda was the application
Okay.
for this, and the sheriff did speak upon that. But the state then decided because of COVID, they were just going to extend the current grants, the FY 21 grants, and automatically approve those for FY 22. So that is what the amendment is to continue on that grant process into FY 22 at the same, with the same dollar amounts, the $10,000 grant with the $30,000 match.
very good. I will make a motion to approve the DARE grant amendment for fiscal year 22.
I will second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Next resolution is the DARE quarterly claim report. Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the DARE quarterly claim report.
And I will second that.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Next resolution approving the DARE annual report.
I'll make a motion to approve the DARE annual report.
I will second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Our next action item, well, it's a discussion with possible action on our WFPO RFQ consultant selection. Ed, I guess maybe I'd ask you to go to the podium just to, if there's going to be questions or a walkthrough. Do we have Eric Schmeckel with us? Do you know? He may not have thought we'd get here this quickly.
that you were progressing rapidly.
Would we want to take a brief recess if we feel Eric's going to be essential to the conversation?
No, I definitely think we have to have Eric here. I would make a motion recess until Eric arrives, or
I will second that.
Motion is second to recess till 9:30.
Sure.
All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. We'll be back here at 9:30.
Pardon? Yeah. Just take the rest of the day off.
Nothing wrong with being in recess for 3 days. That would have been my best week of school.
Looks like a wizard's wand. What is it?
Okay.
That's the woman who's, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I need to take a picture with you with that. That's pretty cool. So how will I describe this to Peter?
Robot. Who doesn't love a good robot?
Yay! Now Eleanor's gonna want one for Christmas. Yeah, do text me whatever that is. I'm not sure. Yeah. So sure that's gonna hold up to a 4-year-old. Right, it's 9:30. We'll be back in session. And I guess I would ask my colleagues, is this the way you want to go? Just have Ed walk us through, or how do you, and that we have Eric Schmeckel, who's with us via Zoom, so.
Yeah, I think the people that were involved in the interviews should certainly have an opportunity.
So Ed and Eric, good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
So this is our time for some brief discussion about the interviews that were conducted last week, our thoughts and next steps. Ed's at the podium, and then looking for you both to give us, I do welcome your input on the interviews and their paper submissions as well.
So, perhaps as Eric gathers his thoughts, in retrospect, I think one of the reasons that in my opinion, there were 3 really very good submissions was because,
Yeah, brief context, overview for the public, maybe just 30 seconds.
Excellent. Thank you, Supervisor Wickham. The proposals and interviews that we're discussing today are from a request for qualifications that Dubuque County offered out in May with a due date in June to provide consultant services to Dubuque County for a federal grant program through the USDA NRCS that we received last. We were contracted with the NRCS this winter for. So this RFQ was for planning services that will culminate no later than June 30th of 2023, a 2-year planning window for services that will result in a environmental assessment or environmental document and a plan that meets NRCS lines for the WFPO process. This process has been one that's been used a lot in the past, but not very much in the last 10+ years. In Iowa, the only 2 in the last while happened almost on top of each other, one in East Polk County that Polk County is working on, and then the one in Dubuque County. So when we push this RFQ out, we send it to no less than 12 firms, primarily in Iowa or very adjacent to here, or firms that have done some work relatively recently related to this in Dubuque County. And what we received were 3 proposals that were all team proposals, meaning that there were multiple consulting firms that had teamed together to submit one team proposal under a lead agency. One of the, and so all told, that includes probably a total of 9 or 10 different firms. In each of the 3 proposals includes, although none of the lead agencies in the 3 proposals are from a firm with a local presence in Dubuque County, each of the 3 proposal teams has a firm that does have a local presence here. They all have done local work, relevant work in Dubuque County in the last few years to varying degrees. And they highlighted that. I think one of the reasons, in my personal opinion, I thought that the 3 proposals and the interviews were all very good. And I think part of the reason that they were so good is that these firms teamed up together, so we didn't have a lot of stray firms that were just trying to go alone, throw their hat in the ring. These were really very serious proposals by extremely competent firms that are very anxious to do this work here. So I was pleased with that. The criteria that we told them that we would be using were about 7 different criteria. I gave that back out to all of the participating members of the team, and the review team ended up being Jay, Ann, Harley, Eric, and myself. although there were some other county employees from the auditor and I think some of the other watershed employees that participated and watched on and may have some input as well. Those 5 were the team, and ultimately that team is providing its feedback to the Board of Supervisors, you, and it's just exclusively you that will make a recommendation. So the proposals that, as I made my own notes, I'm going to shift away from describing the project and into just initially my own reaction. I emailed that briefly to you guys, and I think Dawn is going to throw my comments up here, which are not special comments or better than anybody else's comments, but perhaps just a frame of reference here for the discussion. Again, I will say I was very, very pleased with the proposals. I believe that all 3 of them could very easily complete this project, do the work to the satisfaction of Dubuque County, as well as to the USDA, NRCS, and situate the county in a good position to move forward with implementation dollars. The fact that we are looking to move forward with implementation after this planning process was something that we stressed very heavily in our request for qualifications, making that very clear, as well as in the personal contact that Eric and I had with interested consulting firms. So with that, as I've said, they all had a local presence. All of these teams have done relevant work in Dubuque County to varying degrees. It's not all identical kinds of work, but it's all relevant work to watershed planning and public engagement. Of the 3, I would say that my own personal, now I'm segueing into just Ed's personal opinions, but I thought that Houston Engineering and MSA Professional Services and their other team members had a great report. It was a little bit harder for me to understand the big picture, but in their presentation, I thought that they did a great job helping me understand how their approach would work and how they would get that work done. They've actually done the most local work in our watersheds to date, but I found it slightly less compelling than the other 2, between HDR, RDG, Impact 7G, and their economist firm. They have done some really relevant work lately, and both in Dyersville and in other parts of the county, including the Little Macocata River near Durango and Sageville, for the county's conservation plan update. In my opinion, they may have the best team for public engagement, and they had a clear description of how they'll work with the NRCS and get the county ready to apply for implementation funding. JEO and FIRE, or maybe it's FIRE, I think how they say it, along with Origin Design, which is formerly IIW, their proposal really keyed in, their written proposal really keyed in on what we asked for in the RFQ and sort of showing a path from this planning process to working with the NRCS to implementation funding. And theirs was, in my opinion, the best delineation of that. And they had a good presentation as well. They also are the firm team that has far and away the most recent experience with WFPO grants. They're actually doing several of these right now in Nebraska and Iowa. And the one that at least stressed in their proposal, their relevant experience with working with the Iowa NRCS office, which by their own admissions has had a number of retirements and is not as experienced as it has historically been. And that is something to consider. Those are my own thoughts, and as I said, I'm happy with whoever you have. Those are just the thoughts that I have back to the team.
Thank you. And Eric, do you have high level, or what would you like us to know as part of our deliberation?
Well, I think Ed and I chatted Friday afternoon. And we have a lot of the same thoughts. I followed up with Ed's email, really, similar thoughts as I kind of looked over all the proposals over the weekend. I think it's, I don't think there's necessarily a bad one, the way that they were structured. Houston obviously has done a lot of work in Dubuque and has a lot of experience in doing a lot of the ACPF modeling. I thought HDR and RDG, Impact 7G had probably the most diverse group as far as maybe on the ground people, and the work that Judy Joyce and their team has done with the city of Dyersville already, I think really aligns well with, you know, some of our work that we're looking to get out of this project. I think they were very good in their presentation. I thought they had a strong communication component, you know, with RDG, and I thought RDG did a very good job with the county conservation plan, and then JEO. I think I agree with Ed. I thought the proposal, probably written on paper, was the best. You know, partnering with Origin and having Denny and Cody involved, I think is great. I think that it gives it a local presence. They've done a lot of work on bridges and roads, which potentially could come into play with future projects. So I think it's a hard decision. You know, I don't know if there was one that really outweighed the other. I thought JEO and HDR, RDG were really neck and neck. And John Wiley, who was on the call here as well, you know, John and I talked about it as well too. I think we had a lot of the same opinions. So I think at the end of the day, you know, and I know the RFQ, and we talk about a Northern Dubuque County watershed plan. I feel like Dubuque County has a lot of watershed planning documents and a lot of experience in this. You know, we have ACPF completed parcel by parcel for the entire county. We have landowner engagement processing happening every day. I think when I think about this project, at the end of the day, I think the cost benefit analysis of some major big time, not smaller scale, but larger scale projects is going to be really crucial. Whether that's a big wetland floodplain project or a couple big structural storage pond type projects, that I think is what we need to determine. But I think whichever firm is going to get us ready for that next stage of implementation, for hopefully in the multi-millions of dollars in grant funding, I think that's where the focus has to be with the economic analysis. So as I thought about that question more over in my head, you know, and I looked through the different proposals, I really thought HDR and having an economist on their staff and some of the things that he was saying in the presentation, I started to kind of go back to that a little bit more too, as I think about the cost benefit analysis, and that this is more, I guess, high level type big projects, what we're trying to end up here at the end of this. So I'll stop there and see if John has anything to offer.
So I think I'm unmuted here. My experience with HDR in the past, different region of the country, is that they're a big company. I mean, really big. And my experience was that I kind of had to manage them throughout my projects, and I had a couple with them because they do have a compelling, they have a lot of resources to get the RFQs really well written. A couple of the jobs they didn't do so great, but that again is really dependent on maybe regional type of work and project manager specifically. The thing that I noted was the JEO, I without knowing them and having worked with them, they seem like they had more experience. So for me, the question is, who is going to be the most successful at procuring the funds or funding that we want? I think that HDR would do a good job. but JEO, I think, has more of a proven track record. But then again, you know, not having worked with them, I don't know. That's kind of the summary of my, Houston is great, but I think this is outside of their expertise at the moment.
So if we maybe can bring this back to the Board of Supervisors to see if are we looking for other input from our folks on the ground? What are we thinking? The takeaway is we want somebody who can bring home, get us ready for big dollars from the federal government. That's the goal, right? That's the number one concern. So I think that's, you know, that we just have to decide who can best do that, regardless of, you know, some of the other things, I guess, that they maybe address. To me, it seems experience is critical, and having convinced us who can do that best. So I don't know where folks are with, if we have a suggestion to, I think it's helpful to hear from you, but you're all saying they're all good enough. And that's, you know, so then I guess we come here and say, what are we going to do? They all have a local presence. We've all worked with someone on each of their teams. So I guess that's, you know, I scored them like they came into the room. I scored them 1, 2, 3, which is oddly enough exactly how we saw them, 1, 2, 3. And that was the JCO. I knew the least about them, but they just really hammered home experience and project base and getting the funding completed and knowing who to contact in an environment where the administration inside the government is changing. And that, to me, that was critical. So that's where I was, but I am certainly convincible. And I don't know that Eric and Ed and John, I appreciate your input in my, you know, nothing you've said has indicated that analysis isn't okay, right?
Just back to the supervisors or to those?
No, I'm just asking if, you know, I know so little, it sounds like I'm not off base with that. So, but yes, obviously, you know, either one of you or both, clearly what your thoughts are.
Thank you. So I generally agree with the assessment that we heard from our staff members. I think all three did a really good job. The presentations were extremely professional. The interviews were extremely thoughtful and professional. So I appreciate their time, all the people's times on this, because I know that doesn't come for free. And I have been in that spot many times in my private experience. So greatly appreciate the work that's been put through. The dilemma is you have to pick one. And so after kind of going through, you know, the interviews and the proposals, where I see right now is really there's 2-1 candidates, and that's JEO and HDR and the lead for myself. I think Houston's fine firm. I think they've done a fine job for Dubuque County, but their work is done, and we're ready on to a new project. And so long story short, if I had to pick one today or give a leading indicator, I would look for one. I thought JEO, related to their WFPO, a lot of acronyms, experience was good. They're already working with Polk County, and then with Origin, formerly IIW, being one of the largest and longstanding engineering firms within Dubuque County, that would be my lead candidate. Both RDG and Origin have done local projects for conservation boards and have done well, and so they all have relevant experience within Dubuque County, but my leading candidate at this point would probably have to be JEO and Origin.
I would agree that any one of the three would definitely do the job. The presentations were very interesting and very well done. I had it scored a little different. It was between HDR and JEO. I kind of liked HDR's boots on the ground, public engagement, you know, to keep things moving. I like that a little better than JEO's version of it. But either one of them, I think, would do a great job. Any of the three would do a great job, but as you said, we can only pick one. I would say my top two are HDR and JEO, so I guess they're close. So
Sounds like we have consensus at least on the top two.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little easier down to two. Supervisor McDonough, I think you said your number one pick was in the order they presented was
That was JEO.
JEO as well.
I was going to remind you of the action potentially that you might take.
So what is, it says possible action. What action would we do?
So in consultation with the auditor, if you decide that today you would like to take action, that would be, could just be a motion. There is no resolution packet. Could be just a motion to pursue a contract with a consultant team, that lead agency and each of the consultant teams. So there isn't any resolution today. If you direct us to move forward with developing a contract with them, we know how much it's going to be for. It has a maximum not to exceed amount of $600,000. Then we would do that, and we would do that as quickly as possible. And so hopefully, fairly rapidly, we would come back with a proposal for you to review and eventually adopt if we can work it out with that firm. And that would be by resolution in hopefully, let's say, August.
Okay, so understanding that, I think we have two supervisors preferring JEO by a slim margin. Is there anything that you need to know additional, Harley, to be more comfortable with that choice, or?
No, either one of them will do a terrific job. I'm not, that was my personal, going through the interviews, it was close.
Okay, so are you ready to take action then to make that motion?
Yeah, I will make a motion to have staff prepare contract documents for the request for proposals for JEO and Origin and the rest of their team.
I will second that.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or any clarity needed for the motion? The motion good, Ed? Right. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for the direction, and we'll get started on that right away.
Next item on the agenda is communication, and we do not have any before us. Next is appointments with the Disabilities Council. We have our director here. Dr. Williams, do you want to come to the podium? I don't know if you or Ed Raver prepared the overview document that we have.
Ed prepared it, and
Tanya? Tanya did it. Well, there you go.
I was going to give you all the great credit. I'll give credit to Tanya.
So why don't you tell us what you need us to do today?
So today before you, we have some applicants. I believe there are 9 applicants at this moment. These are individuals that have responded to a call for applications for the Disabilities Council. These individuals have identified as either having a lived experience with disabilities. They've identified as being a parent of someone that they've cared for with disabilities, or they have other interests or expertise in disabilities. So I'm very excited to present these candidates for your consideration. I will note that we have at least 2 individuals may identify as having an intellectual or cognitive disability that would provide some unique and important perspective to our Disabilities Council. And I believe that there will be more applicants following this array of candidates for your presentation and consideration today. Our first meeting is tomorrow.
Oh, exciting. So if we take action today, would you be reaching out to them to be sure that they can be present?
Absolutely. They are all planning on being present, either by Zoom or in person, regardless of the outcome of this meeting today. But yes.
Do we need to address each individually? Can we make one motion to include all of those, one motion?
Can I quote, there are different terms for their appointments, so you will want to apply those terms to each one individually, because they are different.
In their application, do we know any preference that the applicants have related to the terms? Okay, and so we certainly could talk through that at the meetings.
Absolutely.
So,
These puzzles do not go well up here. Because it seems no matter what words come out of my mouth, it is either the wrong date or the wrong something. So I would like to appoint all of these individuals. They seem to be wonderful applicants to the Disabilities Council. And I think they will give you great voice. I think you are right in that this will be unique and I think a powerful council to begin with. So to do that, they all represent advocacy. Do they, what we have, I don't know if you have the memo, there it is up there, okay.
Can I help with math? So I see there's 9 and then there's 12, so that's a difference of 3, right? So for sake of ease, can we eliminate the June 30th, 2023 slot and then pick the other 5 slots for the 9? Or can you decide the terms at your meeting? Is that allowed? So all 9 can be appointed at this point.
Absolutely.
I will make a motion to appoint all 9 applicants to the Dubuque County Boards and Commission for the Disabilities Council.
And I will second that.
Motion is second to appoint all 9 applicants to the Disabilities Council. All in favor say yes or aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. We may need a follow-up motion or some direction that you're going to determine the dates and the category in which they serve, so advocacy or provider, right? And you'll report back to us with the terms and the position?
Yes, and there will be a change, a request coming from the board. It would be advocacy or other. And some people with lived experiences don't necessarily identify as having a disability, which has come forth in our discussions, and we don't need to make those kinds of determinations. Hence, going to other would be sort of a basket for people that are in a moment of their own self-discovery or awareness or identification.
So when might you be able to just report back to us? It can be just an informal memo type thing of who's been assigned where, just so we know. Okay.
I will do that.
That'd be
Thank you
great.
so much.
Other questions?
Sounds good.
Nope. Thank you, Ann.
Thank
Thank
you. All right. Personnel requisitions. The first, oh wait, there's the remaining open vacancies. I'm enjoying that it's getting ever so smaller. So that's exciting. These are the personnel requisitions before us. We have a request for an outreach coordinator. This will be a permanent part-time position, but it is not budgeted. So that would be the point. The Conservation Board approved.
Maybe,
Yeah.
well, backstory on that, and so we currently have budgeted positions for 2 additional naturalists that are not employed right now, and so overall, at this point, it's still July, but most likely those individuals will not be on board immediately, and that will free up funds for this year to allow this to fall within the overall salary budget for Dubuque County Conservation. So I don't see a difficulty in them going over. One of the applicants for this position will be one of our former full-time naturalists.
It's a permanent full-time position though, so obviously then we'll go on forward. So it will, in our next budget year, we'll have to adjust for this, the additional personnel.
Potentially, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, and so related to conservation positions. But right now, as far as whole dollar amounts, I don't anticipate this being an increase.
In this budget year?
Well, wouldn't be allowed to begin with, so yes. I believe that's right. What's maybe, how does that work? So obviously a personnel requisition doesn't supersede our budgets, right?
Correct.
Which we do about 6 times in a year, right? So, strong possibility we'd have that option.
Are they taking the applications now for the naturalist, or?
Yes, those positions are open, and he has interviewed candidates.
Oh, okay.
So he's well on his way to finding the perfect candidate for those two.
Okay. I'd make a motion to approve the outreach coordinator position.
And I will second it.
Motion and second to approve the outreach coordinator position. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. The next is to approve the personnel requisition for temporary full-time election clerks. There are 4 positions total. The auditor's in the room just asking if do you wish to speak. This is the pretty traditional getting ready for the next election.
Correct.
We'll make a motion to approve the personnel requisitions for the election clerks.
I will second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that motion carries. Next on our agenda is tabled and pending items. We don't ever seem to have any tabled or pending items, ever.
Very efficient.
We are very efficient with that. So this brings us to public comments. At this time, there's opportunity for anyone to address the board about something that is of concern to them that wasn't on the agenda. You may do so at this time. If you're present in the boardroom, you would go to the podium. If you are in the virtual world, you would give a wave on Zoom with your video or enter a chat or raise your hand in the Zoom function. And we'll pause for a moment to see if anyone wishes to address the board. We have a hand raised. Jennifer, if you would give us your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, I hope to keep my comments to 3 minutes, but my name is Jennifer Steffen of 3480 St. Catherine Road. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my children. Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure I'm also recording this. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and my children, and I'll have some questions that I would like answered via email as well. And the Board of Health has my email. So I ask that you respectfully send me some of the questions that I have in writing. I understand that Ann McDonough is a liaison to the Board of Health here in the Dubuque community. So some of my concerns are going to be directed straight towards Ann to take my concerns to the Board of Health. And so again, I apologize if I go over my 3-minute time frame. But recently there was a member of the Dubuque County Board of Health who made some comments at a July 7th meeting at 6 p.m. And they were divisive and coercive as it relates to our minor children here in the Dubuque community. I apologize so there were some divisive and coercive tactics that were presented and spoken about as it relates to our children. And I understand that this hasn't gone to our school boards yet, but I'm concerned as a citizen of the Dubuque community as a result. I am concerned that our kids may be singled out as a result of their vaccinated or unvaccinated status at our local community schools. And all kids in our community need to feel calm in a supportive environment and without the fear of being segregated or submitting to randomized COVID test, which is illegal, according to House File 889. All that can be done with our children as at school is standard COVID protocol and screening. So I would expect that when our IMT division in Dubuque will comply with all of the state laws as it relates to this issue. I also heard at that meeting a lot of discussion about vaccinating 70% of our Dubuque population. And my first question is there any type of monetized incentive that our community will receive as a result of reaching that 70% threshold?
Jennifer, can I just, I'm going to ask you to pause right there.
Yes.
The time allotted is 3 minutes, but my question to you right now is, how many questions do you have? How close are you to summation?
Maybe 3 more minutes. And I think it would save us all the time and hassle of me coming back to the next meeting or showing up at the local board if I could just finish my thoughts.
Well, here's the next thing that's going to occur on our agenda, and I would strongly encourage you to remain, is we will have a COVID update, and members of the incident management team are here in the room. If you have anything that is pertinent to any of that discussion, you may be enlightened.
I do.
Okay. So what is your second question?
Allowing
Yes.
minutes in COVID updates.
So I understand that there's going to be a COVID update. I'll have some questions.
No, Jennifer, I need you to provide me with your second question and your third question, and then that is the conclusion. So your second question is what?
Well, I'll have a list of them. I can also put them in writing and email to them to all of the Dubuque Health members, so I could get an.
Sure, that would be perfect. Thank you. Appreciate you being present, and hope you'll stay on just to listen into what the board of the COVID update is, and we'll look for that email from you then and respond accordingly. Okay.
I'll also
Thank you
later. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. All right, we will now, was there any other member of the public? I don't want to gloss over that, but I don't think we have anybody else. So we will move to our work sessions, and our first work session is regarding the COVID update. I do see we have several members of our health department here and our incident management team. Patrice, what would you like to do? Did you want to give your report at the podium? Were you expecting to speak? I mean, one of my questions was going to be, is Samantha going to be available on an ongoing basis? I guess just for public at large, we received a note from Health Board Chair Tom Beshen asking if we needed to have ongoing weekly COVID updates from the health director, Patrice Lambert. We do get incident management team reports at the end of the week on Friday. And so that would be the first thing we might want to give clarity back. But I would say, Patrice, it's possible that Samantha could be in your stead. I mean, she's preparing those reports on Friday. That's her work product. Perhaps she could be here with us, and then you could be doing director type things. Samantha is the data collector, I think. And you also are part of the incident management team. So that might be maybe a more functional use of staffing if there's things that you want to move to, and we can just make sure that we have someone who's present. That might also be a way to go. We also have Tom Berger in the room today. He's also participating via Zoom. I love that. So
I really don't have any update other than what we had in our incident management team Friday update. So I guess we were requested to be here today in case you had any questions. So we'd be glad to answer any.
Is it your request that is it your recommendation that this be the final meeting you are?
Yes,
okay.
It is. The incident management team really does feel, I know we're going to continue working with our vaccination percentages to increase those, but we know that we're getting to a point that we're going to be, again, meeting with our higher ed, our pre-K through 12, We continue to meet with our healthcare providers. So a lot of the work that we did take a break in the month of June, we're now starting to have that added to our plate. We would really like to also begin to bring back some of our normal activities that we had before our COVID dates. So we really truly would like to, as Tom Beshan had suggested, meet with you once a month and then meet with the Board of Health once a month, and then that would be in every other week that you would be getting an update. We would continue with our Friday updates. We would be available at any time for any questions, or if you wanted us to come back for a special session or whatever the case may be, we would be glad to do that. But we're really looking at, again, more placed in front of us, as well as starting to try and bring in some of those activities that we haven't even been able to touch for the last month, or I'm sorry, last year and 4 months. And I did look through, I don't have the exact, but I did look through some of my past calendars, and I believe when we started presenting to you, it was in March of 2020. We started with 3 times a week. Then we decreased it to 2 times a week, but we have been meeting on a weekly basis with the Board of Supervisors since March of 2020.
Correct.
So we would just like to be able to step back a little bit, but again, be present for you if you needed us per phone call, email, whatever the case may be. And we definitely would continue with our Friday updates.
The written Friday updates, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I find the written Friday updates helpful,
Good.
so I appreciate those, and I would strongly encourage those to continue.
Good. And at any time, if you would like to see something added, just email, and we'll add it to that Friday update. Would be glad to do that.
Yeah, I'd be fine with the monthly, and that'd be every other week. That would be fine.
Thank you.
I'm comfortable with that as well.
I have a request for you, Patrice. I think that we need to have reported to us, and I'd prefer that it be in written format, the roadmap, the way forward for your vaccination plan. So at several meetings, I've heard you say, there's lots of ideas and there's things that are happening, and you've said, trust us. And I think it's time for me to see what are the ideas and what's the action plan to move forward. I have always appreciated that you've been here in person, via Zoom, or when we're all on Zoom, that there's not just accountability, but also the opportunity for this board to get our questions answered to each other. And it's also the only time we get to know where each of us is with regard to projects or shortcomings or things to further ask you to do. So I don't know if my colleagues would agree, but I think I'd like to see something that tells us what those ideas are, what your roadmap is, and it's going to be for the whole incident management team, not just for you or just for Samantha.
Sure. And we can start
That's
that this
something.
Friday. Mm-hmm.
See what the thoughts are and get us something that lets us know someone's still on that aggressively. You assure us you are, and I don't really doubt, but I don't have anything to reference. So we will go to monthly. And again, I just want to say, if we ask someone to come, Samantha is quite a good person to be on camera, to be with us. I know you have duties that are separate from each other, correct? So she has space that is your duties only. You could be maybe a further reporter with the board, as you are on Friday afternoons, making the incident management report.
Are you, as far as the Board of Supervisors liaison to the Health Department, Board of Health, excuse me, standing agenda item, is that still happening?
It is a standing agenda item. It is, Tom Beshan and I had serious discussion on Friday how to make it better.
Okay. So that would give us an opportunity, as far as the Board of Supervisors, 2 opportunities, one on a monthly here at this session, and then 2, the Board of Supervisors through you. Excuse me, the Board of Health through,
Right.
through your liaison
Well, and
position.
also through boards and commissions, you know.
Would be a
But I
third.
don't receive any information as a liaison other than what you're receiving as supervisor. So just know that. There's no other information. I don't know any additional information about incident management team. I don't know at all what they are doing. I have no greater view into, you know, diversity outreach, vaccination, clinic times, none of that. We are all, our only knowledge of any of those items is through the updates that we get. I don't have greater access to, I'm not an avenue for information.
Okay, thank you.
So we would just be meeting with Patrice the first Monday of the month then? And the third Monday would be the Board of Health, right? Or the third week of the month is Board of Health meeting, right?
Right. I'm not sure that that's the public outreach that you think you're getting at the public health meeting. You're getting information in, if something at this meeting is brought forward, then folks know they need to go to the Board of Health meeting and voice opinion. But having a Board of Health meeting itself isn't necessarily information going out to the community on an ongoing basis. That's my impression. So we'll just have to see and tweak accordingly, I guess.
I'm comfortable where we're at right now. Maybe there's some additional work and dialogue to do, but I'm generally comfortable with the plan.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Tom and Stacy and Samantha, is there anything that you wanted to say or add, being present? I would just express my gratitude to you. It's rare that I see you in person, Tom. And Stacy as well. I feel like I hardly ever see you in person. So, thank you. Our next agenda item is a work session with Hillcrest, and we do have representatives from Hillcrest here. Dr. Ann Cameron Williams will also be part of this. So if you want to come to the podium, Ann, or are you bringing, let's do introductions. We'll want you to at least, you don't have to be in the second pew like church. Nobody ever wants to sit in the front pew, but whether you want to use the podium to present your presentation. These microphones are also quite good. If you come down and come forward, pull them down so they can be with you. It does feel a bit like you're coming to the principal's office, but this is what I can offer. So maybe we'll do introductions quickly as well. I don't know that my colleagues would know either of you, so.
I will be happy to make the introductions. We have to hear today leadership.
Just touch the green ring at the bottom and then pull the microphone towards you a bit. There you go. Thank you.
We have with us today here leadership from Hillcrest Family Services in Dubuque. We've got Franny Tischer. I always get your last name wrong. She's the CFO of the organization. We have John Bellini, who's the COO and a really good arm wrestler when it comes to advocating for programs for people with brain health and other disabilities. And then we have Mike Fidgen, who is the fairly new CEO of Hillcrest Family Services, hailing from Virginia. So I believe that I'm going to hand over the presentation to them to carry through. This is a revised proposal that was already approved by the Board of Supervisors in February of this year. However, Hillcrest has added some clarification and specificity to this proposal, and before we moved forward with funding, we wanted to make sure that these revisions were considered and approved by the Board of Supervisors. I will also say that this proposal has my recommendation, and it is in alignment with the auditors and with Stella's not quite finished, but the aims and the intention of having a contract with an external agency and the county that is clear, budget specific, has accountability written into it, specific deliverables, and a timeline. And Hillcrest has done a really nice job in making sure that all of these components are in their revised proposal, and we're just taking it to this level to make sure that you approve of the revisions. Thank you. And Mike and John, Nancy, you're all on deck now.
Great, I'll go ahead and kick us off if I can do that. Thank you, Supervisor McDonough, Potta, and Wickham for having us at the work session today. I want to, Ann, at the risk of a public correction, just for the sake of the record, Francie is the Chief Operating Officer of the organization. I'm sure she couldn't do the finance as well. She's that good. And John is our Chief Business Development Officer. And I'm going to defer to John to present since he has led the project to this point.
So really on the first slide, I don't know who's managing the slides, but we have partnered with Unity Point Hospital to conduct a year-long geriatric brain health assessment across the county. Really in discussions with Chad Wolvers, their CEO, we were talking about potential gaps in services from their Summit brain health unit for the geriatric population, and could we potentially assist in providing gaps of services at a lower level, lower cost. Through that process, we talked about really not knowing those answers. So really identifying a need to do a year-long assessment to identify the resources, the gaps in resources, and pull people together to bring a recommendation after this year-long assessment back to the community to see if we can fill any services for people in need. Key elements, we're partnering with Hoodia Health, who operates our Access Me Care social engagement platform. So we've engaged with this organization based on the social determinants of health. So it's a public platform that moves people through care. Ed, the CEO of Hoodia Health, has history through participatory community research projects throughout the country of bringing groups collaborative together and partnering to find out gaps in services. So that partnership with him, we thought just made sense to do that. Part of his consulting would be bringing a geriatric brain health collaboration group together that will meet, be a cross-section of the population served within Dubuque, and meet bi-monthly. The other piece that he would do is he would do a brain health services landscape analysis. So really looking at quantitative data review. He would work with Unity Point, looking at their admission and discharge data, as well as potentially partnering with Mercy on their data to see who's coming in, and also looking at different public information, census tracts, different SAMHSA information, different community information there. We would go on to asset mapping, which is pulling off, basically scraping off of resources to see what is available in this community for the geriatric brain health group, which give us a good information. And then doing some focus groups to gather more information on the topic, and really that bigger group would find five key informant interviews to basically address observations and findings as a result. What the plan would be is to report back to you guys on a monthly update to Ann Williams, mid-year project update to the County Board of Supervisors, and a year-end report that sums up what our recommendations or findings are. Again, I think in an effort to better serve the aging population that has brain health and often has been disconnected during the pandemic. Any questions? Pretty straightforward project from our opinion. I don't know if you have any questions.
I appreciate very much that you have done drafts and rewrites, and that, you know, maybe we're on a fine line of what we're looking for, and you've kind of become the contract standard to some extent of what our new program to allocate funding and doing purchase services, you're forging that to some extent. So I appreciate that what you did before was fine. It just wasn't specific enough to get us through to where we needed to be. And so that's why you're here. I don't think, Ann, that we're bringing this back to the region, correct? This is just to do that. So as a board, we see greater clarity what the project is. There are many people in the community. I think I'm very hopeful that this project will show us a clear map of where we need to go for seniors, that they're overlooked and we don't have good data for them. So, did either of you have questions for them about this project?
No, I don't have.
No high-level questions other than, or no detailed questions other than high level? Do you still feel that you can execute this program and hit the deliverables?
Well, absolutely. So we've worked with Ed's group, and in the plan that we had put out, we're confident with that group's experience to manage that, and working with Unity Point to manage. So I definitely believe we'll get to the deliverables by the end of the year.
And then internally budgeting, was this local dollars here? Was it part of our mental health budget? Was it the fund balance ones that was approved by the region? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. This is a fund balance project that's been approved by the region for fiscal year 22. And I would just add that after the meeting that we had last week, the team, the Hillcrest team you see in front of you is, I think, incredibly capable and will deliver the services that are in these grants, I think, in great form, and it will be helpful. It's not just parking money to get something done. I think it's really going to be the initial point to set up for the research. The Access Me Care and the CEO that they referenced, we had opportunity to have a conversation with him via Zoom, and he is it's just very impressive with knowledge base, and what he's looking to bring to your project as well, I think is pretty tremendous. So and we all got a memo from Ann, I think last week, detailing the conversation that we had about the access point that Hillcrest is leading on for our community. So I thank you for that. So I think we're seeing really the creation of stronger partnership. You know, the highest level is here to give to us information. I know we have waited for this for years to see really strong Hillcrest leadership that can present a project and then honestly close a project so that the funds do get spent and we get back a product in return. So there's lots of things to do, and I'm excited to partner with you on this, and also really excited to have Access Hub discussion as well. So we're on to something where Dubuque, I can say, as a strong partner, and I'm beginning to see that there's possibilities and that we might be working towards something, and that's really, I think, very important at this time.
Thank you very much. Anything you need from the Board of Supervisors?
We appreciate your support.
You have it.
Keep up the good work.
Go do good things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, John.
Well, we are going to, looks like we need to take some time to recess. Our next isn't until 10:40.
Good with that. I'll motion to recess till 10:40.
I will second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. We'll be back here at 10:40. Thank you.
Somebody was waving again.
Don't make me bang it again.
Nobody else. Having to get over there and kill the fans.
All right. We're back in session, and we have a work session
Kevin.
at 10:40 a.m. And this work session is with Dubuque County regarding our emergency bridge loan program. Thank you, County Attorney May, for being present in the boardroom. I appreciate that very much. We have some correspondence from, I think it's from ECIA, but it's actually from Attorney Jeff Walters. Who's going to lead us through this? Do we have anyone from ECIA present?
Matt Specs.
So, Matt, are you here, Matt?
Yes. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
thank you. Very lightly, but yes, thank you for being present.
And Ed and I will tag team sort of, because I have the current information, he has some of the backstory, but this is a bridge loan program, I think went into effect in May of 2020. They were $10,000 loans. We had a meeting with the board a couple months ago discussing action on a number of delinquent accounts. We had 4 at that time. One of those accounts has subsequently made payments and is remedying that loan. We do currently have delinquent loan accounts, and the purpose of today's meeting is to figure out what our current and potential action is on these loans, sort of where the supervisors would like to have us take this. We had previously asked ECIA to send out some letters, and those are the letters from Clemens, Walters, Conlon, Rundy, and Hyatt, and those are attached there as well. So we are looking for guidance on next steps.
So we have 3 that are delinquent at this time, but the potential exists for actually any of these folks that we made. I mean, these are all
the standards that are set in place today would apply to any future delinquency, so it would be good to sort of have an idea. This was not a component of the project that was really flushed out early on, so we're looking to sort of clean this part up.
With the letters that were sent out, were there any replies to the 3, Kevin?
Matt may be able to clarify, but I do not believe that anybody responded that is currently delinquent. I believe there was a response back from a delinquent account that has since been remedied. Is that correct, Matt?
Correct. Yes, that is correct, Kevin.
Perfect, thank you.
And how many loans were initially made?
19. 19.
How many?
19.
19 were initially made. And are any of them completed and paid and closed?
There is one that paid in full the first day and is eligible to make payments.
So 18 are outstanding and 15 are in good stead, and 3 are experiencing difficulties.
Correct.
So our decisions are really based on any of those 15 to still have trouble, right? I mean, they're all emergency funding, basically.
Yeah, I think, this is, the county doing loans is not new, so Matt can elaborate on that. So we've had a loan fund through ECIA for many, many years, and we have a few. This is unique in that we have a larger amount of businesses that applied for a loan and a smaller dollar amount of the loans. A lot of our other loans are larger in size. My vantage point would be what's the documents and what's our agreement with ECIA, and how is ECIA going to move forward with all the loans or loans that we think need more attention. That's what we're paying them for. I wouldn't advise the Board of Supervisors or our auditor tries to solve this. That's not our role in the beginning and probably isn't our expertise at this moment.
In response, there was a component of the initial program that ECIA was paid $6,000, which breaks out to about $300 per loan. In the last meeting we had, ECIA spoke that they would be able to send out letters from an attorney that they had a relationship with to these companies that were delinquent, but that we would need to figure out moving forward what the next action would be on the county side, or if we wanted to enlist ECIA, there would likely be an additional charge. So given that we only have 3 we were thinking that this is maybe something we could handle internally without having to pay for. But again, this is up to the discretion of the board.
Matt, can you comment?
Sorry, had to unmute myself. Yeah, again, that was kind of after our last meeting, our understanding, like Kevin said, we really only charged $300 for these up front. We did have our attorney send out the certified letters to the ones that were behind, but again, to pursue after that, we would probably need we would have to talk about additional payment.
We did reach out, I think, to Attorney May. I believe you were in the boardroom the last time this was discussed. And I just wondered if you could bring us up to just remind us of what your position was about this.
So I think when we talked about this the last time is when there was some thought that, well, to reach out to the debtors and see if there was perhaps some nudging that might help move the needle. I think most data would tell you that after about 90 days, the chance of, collecting payment goes down significantly. So these are probably pretty much in step with, kind of the standard of, debt collection. Looking at these, and I don't know about the Performance Edge, if that's a corporation or if that's just a, sole proprietor doing business as that. But with the corporations or the LLC, you can pursue suit against them. Obviously, those judgments would be against those corporations. And we all know that, corporations give, kind of protection to the principals or the incorporators, if you will, personally. I guess I'm kind of driving at, there's lots of judgments that go uncollected, but at least if it's in the form of a judgment, perhaps, if there's something that, comes to bear or comes into the companies, there would be something to collect on at that point then. I mean, you have a judgment, you can execute on it, et cetera. So that's kind of, I think, where you're at this point. Any further letters isn't going to generate any more activity.
Well, the top one, obviously there was a death in the family there.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
That could still be part of the estate getting closed up yet, so
sure.
There's a possibility, I would assume, that could get settled up when the estate.
If you file a claim with the estate. I mean, nobody has taken action, as far as I know, to file a notice, with the estate itself.
Yeah.
Well, they would have gotten their letters.
They're open right now. Yeah.
I have some thoughts. I mean, whenever the board's ready. So I share maybe a more unique perspective because in my other position at Northeast Iowa Community College, I work with a small business development center, which is funded through the SBA, which is a federal government program. And so during the pandemic over the last 18 months, over $5 trillion has gone from the federal government to state and local, including the $19 million that we currently have from the American Rescue Funds. And millions, tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of businesses have been influenced by those funds, which are all tax dollars. And those were in an effort to keep the economy and keep these businesses afloat and to dampen down, at one point, the almost 30% unemployment we had in Dubuque County. That was the time these loans were initiated. And so I think it's fair to look at these in different contexts than we normally would look at our ECI revolving loan funds. And our county has a revolving loan fund, so does many of the other counties in the state of Iowa. So that's a common practice that occurs, that government steps in when we feel it's in the public's interest to provide additional funding and additional backing for loans. That happens at the state level, happens at the federal level as well. So I would really focus on the time and opportunity when we did this. If you focus on basically the punitive damages and the delinquencies, I think you'll be disappointed, and I think we'll miss the spirit of what we were intended to accomplish. And so I have some ideas, but I think that's the first thing I'd really challenge ourselves, not to look at these in present day time, but look at this as part of the overall rescue was the last act that was called, basically the pandemic relief effort and the small local effort that we provided, which is now, and maybe Stella can comment, 100% backed by the federal government. So economic assistance to businesses is part of the American Rescue Funds. We've received $19 million. The state of Iowa did over $150 million grants directly to counties. We had hundreds in Dubuque County that were recipients of those, and some of them might be on this list as well. And so I don't claim necessarily to have the exact answer, but I think if we go down the path of we're going to punish these small businesses, I think we're going down a wrong path.
And I don't want to punish anyone, right? It's not about, it isn't punishment. It's what's fair in terms of the agreement that they made is with the county, with county funds, not with rescue plan funding. And so we're in that awkward place where no harm is intended, but we have to be equitable with the folks who are making payment back. That's the you know, it's the parent not wanting to favor his son, right? You don't want to favor someone.
That's happened. So, I mean, there's been winners and losers in this. You can talk to the, 100,000 restaurant revitalization fund applicants that did not receive funding and the other $50 billion that did. So
Right.
There has been winners and losers across the board on the local, state, and federal level, and that has occurred. It's unprecedented times where money has flowed from government to business to keep the economy afloat because, check it. The unemployment rate at one point was near depression levels. And if we did not have things like the PPP, if we did not have the, EIDL loans, emergency injury disaster loans available, if we did not have the rescue funds, our economy would be in shambles. And so I just would keep an eye out that I know what you said is true. That was the agreement. These were local funds, but things have changed. We do have funds that could easily offset any of these deficits. And so that's my 2 cents. If the board wants to go down and dive on each one of them and try to figure out how we're going to extract dollars from them, that can be the board's discretion, but I would highly, highly encourage a different path.
I guess all that being said, what I was going to suggest is that there's nothing that says that we can't give them more time.
Correct.
Good first step.
We're looking for communication, though. We've sent out letters, we've made phone calls, we've not gone and knocked door to door. We would love to open a dialogue, have a conversation. We understand that there are people with hard times. We understand that there are businesses that just didn't get a good go. We're not getting that communication right now, so that's what we're trying to figure out.
Crystal Lake Cave, that owner is deceased.
Correct.
Right. Joe's Diner doesn't exist anymore. It's been, I think, leveled to the ground.
Correct.
And we don't know about the third one. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily anxious to go pursue any of these at this time. I think it's noted that this is where we are, and let's look back, just like we do with the trailer park, Knapp Trailer Park. Let's see what happens in 60, 90 days, right?
Things are on fire and stink there, but hopefully that analogy doesn't hold true. But I think most of the citizens are out of harm's way now. I think giving more time would be a thing. I wouldn't look to have a lot of our staff. I appreciate the offer of the auditor's office to take these over. I don't see that as your primary role and function and expertise. I'm saying you couldn't do that. I do see ECIA, that has been their role. They manage business growth. That's what Matt Speck is the president of. And we've already entered an agreement with them to manage these. I think that's the direction we should continue to go.
Is the board willing to pay for that direction?
Possibly. I'd like to know the eligibility of funds for the American Rescue Act related to these accounts and ECIA and their involvement in economic development. So that would be one of the things I'd want to know before I gave you a hard yes. But I think...
Because our offer at the auditor's office was to send a letter, make a call, maybe knock on a door. I don't think we were looking to reinvent the wheel with the whole agreement. But we will follow whatever direction comes from the board.
And I agree with Dan. We don't have to, do anything right away. Time, give them time. Obviously, Joe's is out of business and demolished. Obviously, he did get the $10,000 also, and obviously had no intention to repaint it if the building's already tore down and everything, so. And the Performance Edge, I'm not familiar with that one either, but Crystal Lake Cave, I mean, I think there's still a lot of potential there.
They're open for business, correct?
Right, I just
ECIA
think it's a communications issue.
And ECIA has done what the contract says. After 90 days, they're back here, and we can say, so noted. Please continue to send routine correspondence to all 18 outstanding loan recipients and keep us apprised in another 90 days. I wouldn't not write them letters that say, the letter they've been writing, I think is fine. They want interest in extending terms, please. That's a fine letter to send. And maybe they'll open one of them, and maybe they'll make a phone call. There's been a shift. This is different than it was back in May.
And we receive these updates monthly from ECIA,
So we'll just ask ECIA to continue. We appreciate the 90-day check-in, and we'll have another day check-in in 90 days.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, we have a few moments before our work session at 11 a.m. with the Urban County Coalition representatives.
Maybe you can come on up, we can do introductions, and by that time, we'll stall enough that it'll be 11.
We'll get comfortable. We got 2 minutes before we start having
Larry and
conversations.
Gary, come on up. You've been here before.
Good morning.
Good morning. For me? All righty, thank you.
Harley, this is Larry Murphy. Have you met him?
Not in person. Yep.
Thank you for doing this. I actually do keep these. Oddly, I do.
You do keep those?
Yeah, I do. And look at them and reference them when something's driving me crazy and I can't find the answer to a thing.
A lot of information.
I think, yeah. We're going to be trying to get together this summer to do the legislative look ahead.
Yeah, I think, we haven't decided whether we've got.
Well, it depends upon the Delta variant, doesn't it?
I think it does, yeah. Unfortunately, that's.
Which one?
There's a new variant called the Lambda variant.
How do you spell it?
LAM. There's an article about it.
Where's this at?
Some of the areas along the Mediterranean. So, apparently, adults.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That was our 10 o'clock. You're late. We have our COVID update at 10, so.
It's here.
Heard much about it here.
Our cases,
Not much about it here yet.
we've been better than others, and our vaccination rates are better than others related to Iowa. So far, everything's down, and I don't believe has changed on the upside, so good, all good. Numbers are pretty low, though, it's hard to see trends.
Yeah.
We're at 63%.
Yeah, although if you're the one person that dies, that's not real good. You know, they don't really care about trends and numbers.
Right.
The concerning thing is that Delta variant, CNN reports this morning in Springfield, Missouri, the people on ventilators are in their 20s and their 30s and their 40s. and their hospital is 91% ventilators,
Are they vaccinated?
unvaccinated.
Unvaccinated? Okay.
So that's the public health news, but, well, it's 11 o'clock, and we can turn our topic of discussion to the Urban County Coalition. Welcome, representatives, Larry Murphy and Gary Grant. Thank you for traveling in this morning.
Yes.
And we'll kind of turn it over to you to...
I'll have Larry first address kind of the document that we put in front of you, and we have we'll leave another one of these, in case you want to, the public wants to view it.
And I think the team might like it. Here's the auditor. There you go.
Right now, we need to get to put in
And we'll
your
leave
file.
these two for. And we've also sent an electronic copy.
Just for now, if you don't.
Yeah, and we've also sent an electronic copy, so, so please feel free to do that. Larry, you want to address kind of the organization of the...
Electronic version of this as well, but just kind of walking through the format. We have the narrative or kind of an overview of the legislative session, and that's on tab 8. The way the packet is set up is the narrative that gives an overview. That either your priorities or county coalition or issues that. So tabs F and G are your, I guess I should have. Those are some of the key issues that there's more extensive information on. Then tab H is the bill. And turn this one on, that might be better. The bill tracking is what Gene Logan sends to you every day. And briefly, the process there is I go through all the bills, amendments, everything. Identify those priorities for you, or ones that we think you at least need to take a look at, see if you want to take a position on. She sends those out to you, and so that bill tracking is everything that we monitor, even if you did not declare or take a position on it. At least you see the kind of the workload that we're doing, and then the newsletters that Megan put together is at the end. And then tab B is the legislative priorities from the Urban County Coalition that you all decided. So that, Gary, I'll let you jump in. And
yeah, I won't cover kind of everything that's in your packets. I mean, we cover that sort of regularly at UCC calls, and I'll give you an opportunity to read it. We want to leave a lot of sort of time for questions today if you have them, but I do want to cover sort of just a few kind of the larger issues. But first of all, I want to thank you for kind of involving your staff and the other electeds in the courthouse. We depend on these folks for a quick turnaround of information on bills regarding how your particular county is affected by whatever legislation kind of might be in front of the legislature. So I know during the legislature, unfortunately, is also the same time when you guys are doing budgets. So a lot of your staff actually have more important things to do than to answer information requests from us. But we do appreciate it that they've been very responsive, and also your other electeds, like your auditor, have been. I know we dealt with some fairly significant kind of election issues this session. But I did want to cover a couple of the large ones. As you know, we've kind of surmised for the last 2 or 3 years that there was growing bipartisan support for eliminating the backfill. Unfortunately, it was not only, this was one of the things that wasn't sort of only confined to one party. Both parties, when they looked at this sort of rather large pot of money, it was, I think, $152 million going to cities and counties. They all sort of thought other priorities, could be better served by reallocating this money. So we knew that it was there was a ticking clock on the backfill. One of the things that we were able to sort of help do, working with other organizations, is get the implementation of that pushed back from the beginning of this fiscal year to the beginning of next fiscal year, which I think legislators were somewhat sympathetic to the fact that all of our budgets, being county budgets, were already certified. There was no prospect of going back to recertify them, which for what would have been kind of a rather significant cut in funding kind of in the middle of a fiscal year.
Can I jump in with a question?
Absolutely.
And hopefully I'll be surprised.
No.
So you mentioned bipartisan on that bill.
Yes.
You know the vote and how many Democrats joined that?
Yes.
What was the vote in the House and the Senate? How bipartisan was it? So I'm going to challenge your words of bipartisan.
Well, keep in mind that it was part of a much larger bill that actually.
What was the final vote? That's all I got to go on. I can't parse out the bill. I'll be happy if it was. I'll be refreshed.
Yeah.
That there was some bipartisanship, but I'm guessing it's 90-10. It's not.
Yeah.
9-1.
Yeah. And I would caution you from reading too much into this particular bill.
Your words were bipartisan, and I want to understand if that was true.
I said increasingly bipartisan.
Okay. Well, since it never actually came to a vote before,
yeah.
And this is kind of a pretext, I guess, to my slight objection to continue hiring your firm. You've done great things, and we'll get to that when we get it. But, and maybe keep going. We can come back to that if you've got two of you here. One can grab the numbers, and one can go there.
I'll let Larry kind of dig up the.
But it was a big deal for us, and I know you fought for it for many years and successfully defended it for many years.
Yeah, and this year, unfortunately, the victory was pushing it back, the implementation back to the beginning of the next fiscal year. So at the very least, we can plan for it. So I also want to address mental health funding. This was probably one of the things that caused kind of most of the consternation in the particular, the large Senate tax bill, which was, I think, Senate File 615 was the number of it. Ended up being kind of the 619, Senate File 619, excuse me.
Turn on the air since they're right up here, and I think we should be able to hear it. That would help me. We could do that.
Sorry.
No, they just make sure everybody can hear you. Normally, when the air is on, we can't hear people back there, but you're front and center. You got the first row seat.
We're going to turn on the air conditioning. We're going to turn on the air conditioning and see if we can hear anybody. I have very, very poor hearing, even with hearing aids, so.
The Senate File 619 was the bill that, and although we advocated for an increase in the stability of the mental health funding system, we wanted state participation. We didn't want the state to take over it. One of the small victories in this bill, I think, that I think will be of larger consequence as we move forward is the retaining of the regional governance boards. Now, regional governance boards under the new mental health system that started this beginning of this fiscal year, they do have this, and this is a fairly significant sort of authority, is to hire and fire the regional CEO. So I think that having fairly significant control over who is ultimately in concert with DHS is making the decisions will be a fairly significant sort of hammer to wield from regional governance boards. Now, I still have a couple of concerns that we actually outlined to state legislators. Our preference was a combination of funding that would have been local property taxes and state participation. We ended up with a system that's going to be eventually 100% state funded. So I'm not altogether certain that a one-legged funding system is inherently any more stable when the state is doing it than it was when the county was doing it. So I think a big part of kind of our problem going forward is making sure the state sort of fulfills its commitments that it's made in the bill. I am worried about that as well because there were many eloquent speeches on the floor of the Senate from the Republicans that talked about how no legislature can bind a future legislature to a specific course of action. That being in relation to the backfill. So they were arguing, and this was kind of one of our big sort of talking points on this bill, that in the same piece of legislation, you are breaking a promise and making a promise. By breaking a promise, you're telling us why you didn't have to fulfill that promise, but making us yet another promise that this time you really mean it. You're going to fulfill it because it's in the bill. Well, I think it's going to depend largely on going forward whether or not they keep that promise. If they keep that promise, it does mean more money in the system. It does mean that the counties still get to keep a little bit of oversight in the regional governance boards. But again, like I said, I'm not inherently sort of convinced that a one-legged funding system is as stable as the funding system needs to be. As you remember, as part of the Urban County Coalition, what we advocated was for a floating levy that would establish sort of an overall cap to number of dollars in the system, and that the county property tax levy would float depending upon how much state money was in the system. So if the state money decreased, the local money would increase. So that would provide some stability in the funding system. Any questions on?
Gary, the vote in the House, Jay, was 64 to 28, so 5 Democrats voted for it. In the Senate, it was party line. It was 29 to 15. So no Democrats in the Senate voted for it. In the House, you had 5 Democrats. So when Gary said bipartisan, his thing about quote marks around bipartisan.
Wasn't zero. Yeah. Increase, and there have been zero. Yeah. So 5. And the part, I can. 5 out of 150? Well, I can tell you that the increasingly bipartisan sentiment didn't extend to the mental health changes. I think if it were simply a vote on, and I'm just telling you kind of feedback we're getting from legislators across both parties and across the state, there was an increasing sentiment that counties and cities had, quote unquote, and this is what we were hearing, grew out of the need for this because of the growth that Iowa had experienced in valuations. So I think our days were numbered, unfortunately. Now, I'll tell you a couple of successes we had this session that I think were some of our smaller priorities. House File 523. It was a flood protection. It allows you to designate, or it designates flood protection as an essential county purpose. Now, if you read this bill, it's fairly broad, and one of the reasons we supported this and got involved early in this is because, frankly, there are many projects that you can do that are both applicable to flood protection and water quality, which was one of the Urban County Coalition's sort of priorities, is to allow more flexibility and allow counties to do more projects for water quality. This one is, I think, going to be bigger than a lot of people realize, as far as allowing flood protection and flood recovery, not only flood protection and flood recovery, but doing water quality projects. So that one was a pretty big one.
Right. We talked about that at our summer meeting that I attended on behalf of this board 2 years ago, and it's written into your infrastructure and our legislative priorities, saying we need a funding mechanism to address the water quantity. So I thought that was, I mean, you and I talked about this frequently throughout the session, like, how's that going? Yeah. Going great, don't talk about it.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, one of the things that we run into is there is a pervasive thought at the legislature under the current political climate that legislators are, their number one task is to protect local taxpayers from tax and spend municipal government. And our response to that always is that we believe that there is no entity that is more sensitive to the property tax levy than a county board of supervisors, because regardless of what that is, your part of that might be with the smallest part of that. It's small, certainly smaller than the school districts, and in many cases smaller than the cities in their particular jurisdiction. The problem is that the only names that go out on that are yours. So when that letter is mailed out, it's your name on there.
We're the only R's and D's.
Right. So when dealing with that, sometimes we have to take a lower sort of profile when we run across something that might actually help you do something that you want to do. This originated from an idea down in Muscatine County, where the county and some of there's a couple of large local employers that they're looking to protect. But we recognize pretty quick that this has some pretty broad-reaching effects for water quality. And like I said, we'd be happy to answer any questions on that you guys have.
I think it's a good bill. I mean, there's a lot of work that can be done now.
Yeah, we think so.
Before this, you couldn't get anything done.
Mm-hmm. No, you didn't have any authority to do much of anything. Rural EMS funding, this is another thing that I think actually was a success this year. This bill is a little convoluted, so forgive me, I'm just going to go kind of a quick overview of it. What this requires you to do is to take a vote to make rural EMS, actually as a board resolution, to make rural EMS an essential county purpose. Once you do that, you can geographically define boundaries of rural EMS districts. Within there, you can levy up to $1 per thousand evaluation in there to fund rural EMS efforts. If you require more money, the district would have to vote on that, and you can to levy up to an additional 75 cents.
And that's at the supervisor level, we're able to set that levy?
You can set it up to $1.
Townships, up to $1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
And then those funds still go through the townships, or are they allocated through here? Because normally EMS goes through the townships, right?
Right. Yeah, I think.
Walk me through that.
I think that levy, and that's, the bill's not clear on that. Okay. So, yeah, it's my understanding that funding, because you're setting the levy, could very well flow through you.
Okay.
So that's how I read the bill. I could be,
So let's see where that would hit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't hit the general basic, that's capped.
No.
Where does it go?
This would be a special levy, a special like rural EMS levy, after you passed a resolution to name that an essential county purpose.
Okay. We're fortunate to have a lot of good volunteer systems, and our townships have been paying for the baseline.
Right.
So thank you.
Yeah, so this, and I think, like I said, if you wanted to raise that more than $1, there'd have to be a 60% vote to raise that up to an additional 75 cents. One of the downsides of this was the 11 most populous counties, instead of getting a 15-year expiration date on that particular levy, it's a 10-year expiration date. So.
And then it has to be approved by the state again?
Then it has to be approved by the voters again.
The voters,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The additional levy.
Thank you.
So.
Can you hear back there?
Going back to mental health, another priority of the Urban County Coalition was telehealth parity. I think that was achieved in the standings, in the standings bill, where we achieved telehealth parity, which is vital to extending mental health care across the state. Because the problem is in every area of the state there is a shortage of both frontline mental health workers and prescribing mental health physicians. Unfortunately, in this particular region, one of the things we run into is, if you look at it, we actually have one of the highest number of prescribing mental health proficient people in the state. The problem is that most of them we can't access because most of them are on faculty at the University of Iowa. So it presents a little bit of a misleading picture about how many prescribing mental health professionals we have here in Iowa or in this region. And the last victory we had, and there were other bills that never never made it past the subcommittee, but the last one that was fairly persistent until the end of session would have made significant changes to the Forest Reserve Program, dramatically affecting urban forestry, because as we all know that Iowa ranks pretty close to the bottom in public lands, and that's not likely to change anytime soon. So allowing smaller, treed parcels to receive the Forest Reserve Program designation is fairly important, especially in larger, more urban counties. So those are just a few of the things that I wanted to cover, and I'm happy to answer questions, any questions that you all have. That was a 4.5 month session in about 20 minutes. So
Tab C is the one that goes into Senate File 619, but instead of hitting you with the 300-some page bill, this goes highlight division by division, highlights within it. And so as Gary was going through it, you go back through and look at, and I think when we talk about, again, bipartisan, I think people were torn because there was parts thrown into that bill that people had, it was appealing to them, and they had to make that call. I don't like this, this, and this, but there's one part that I like. Which way do I go? So it's, so tab C is well worth going through, because that's Senate File 619, and that is that massive bill.
Well, and I think that there was some consternation, even among people who didn't like the approach, that the funding approach for mental health does represent a fairly significant increase in the investment. Up $120 million once this kicks in, and then an additional $5 million in what they call a regional incentive fund. So right now, I think the state expenditures, the state levy amount was $88 million was the last figure I thought I heard, was what counties were levying. But that didn't take into account monies that were being spent out of reserve funds. So I think that the last number I remember hearing about the statewide expenditure was $110 million. I think counties were expending on mental health. So it represented an additional $10 million or $15 million in spending. That's assuming that commitment is kept. Plus, there was a growth factor built in, which is something that we had fought for since 2013 for several years, that there would be a mechanism by which this funding would increase over time.
So was the UCC's position to keep status quo? Was that our position? Or did we vote in favor of the bill? Tell me in the end I'll give you my 2 cents on where we're at, but I'm curious where UCC was. In the end, my assumption was we were against the bill. We didn't want the change, the UCC. Is that
We didn't want this particular change, yes.
Yeah, and I think that points out one of my dilemmas, is that an early idea I had, and I didn't write a white paper on it, and I didn't go down and lobby on it, but I mentioned to a few people that I felt that brain health, mental health shouldn't be on a property tax levy.
Right.
I thought it should be removed, paid by the general fund state, and replaced by land and water levy, which to some degree we are starting down that path.
Right.
And so that's something that we're paying you to lobby against happening, not in whole. The water side, I think, was there. And so I think that points up one of my dilemmas, is that it's difficult to get uniformity amongst the counties. It's difficult to get uniformity, obviously, at the party level sometimes.
Sure.
And then it's extremely difficult sometimes to get unity at the local level when we are registered with parties. And you two were at one point as well. You know, you were badged when you go, and that's how you get elected, and that's how our process works. And so I think I see that as just one example where it really seems to be struggling at me that is this an effective way for our county to work with the state legislature? And so that's one example. And maybe I'll jump in before I go too deep in that. You're talking about the mental health. Is that, what I'd like to say is that you two both have been, along with Megan, very receptive and have been available to me at any time. And I think your level of service to Dubuque County is good, very good, very high. And then even specifically during the pandemic, we've had conversations when there was a lot of unknowns related to shutdowns, related to, you know, early testing, related to what the governor's going to do that would influence our citizens and our businesses. And you were there for me at every call, and some of them were late at night. So I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's very helpful.
Right. To answer your question about sort of the method, I don't know that and I can't speak for the UCC just from what we were getting on calls. I don't know that there was necessarily a difficulty in removing, with the prospect of removing property taxes from the equation, or not having property taxes pay for mental health services. The difficulty we had is especially with sort of conversations going on at the same time about the backfill, was the state keeping its commitment. Because the problem always has been long-term, is that when the state makes a commitment, there is turnover, and then new legislators start asking themselves, why did the old guys do it like they did it?
Or we didn't do it.
Or we didn't make the promise, so we don't have to keep it. Right. What we didn't necessarily want property taxes sort of funding mental health. What we wanted to do was not eliminate the levy, so that if the promise, and that would be sort of a fail-safe against the state not keeping its promise, that, because right now there's no penalty for the state for not keeping its promise. If a state legislature had to come back here to a town hall meeting and say, I voted not to fund mental health, so your property taxes are going to go up, that's kind of an incentive for the next generation of legislators to keep their promise.
My point is, though, at the end of the day, 90% or higher Republicans voted for it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, 90% of Democrats, if not higher, voted against it.
Right.
And that's the problem. And so, and then we have 2 Democrats and 1 Republican on this board. So how are we supposed to feel about paying you to do a job when that's the ultimate outcome? Mm-hmm. And so maybe, and so that's kind of where I'm like, wow, not saying it's your fault, not saying it's, it's just the system that we're faced with. And that gives me dilemma and pause, is that I see you, the analogy I was kind of thinking is like meteorologists. You're very visible, you're loved, and then you provide a forecast. But you can't change the weather. You can't change the results of the partisan atmosphere that we live in. And so that leads me to believe that I want to be less involved with that type of process. And then secondly, when I look at our other cohorts, wonderful people, and normally, percentage-wise, vote for the party that I'm representative, the Democratic Party. We're the lone exception. Last 2 presidential elections, this county voted Republican. And that's the will of the people. The rest of our partners did not. They voted Democrat. So that's another dilemma that I would be curious to how we're handling here, and do we want to spend money getting involved in that mess? Mm-hmm. And so I don't claim to have solutions, but I'm noticing things are different.
Right. Sure. Jay, just a couple things. One, go all the way back to Gary's summary. The growth factor in the mental health funding was something that we've been working on, really going back to 2013. And the UCC was heavily involved with getting that done in terms of the regionalization. Secondly, so we have a growth factor theoretically, but the way the majority party passed the bill, it's not based on state revenue. It's based on state sales tax revenue, which is the most fluctuating of the various taxing the state has. And so, having been a county supervisor many, many years ago, I know that if there's cutbacks in services on mental health, intellectual disabilities, whatever groups that you want, they will be in here asking for help. And so, but I think, in going back to your piece on property tax funding mental health, and Ann, I think you may have been on that Zoom subcommittee meeting that they had on Senate File 619, the big bill. If I remember right, there was like 230 plus people on that Zoom call, and they went, in fairness, they went for well over an hour letting people testify. While Gary went through the backfill issue and some of the mental health side, what I talked about was exactly the point you made, is that we need to look at something other than property tax. And if local government, like most other states do with their local governments, if local government was given an array of different, taxing or revenue sources, you'll see the property tax plummet because nobody likes property tax. And so if you look at your corresponding counties in other states where they have anywhere from 8 to 10, 15 different revenue options, their property tax as a portion of their revenue stream is down in the 6, 7, 10% range. So my point is, and I made that point to Senator Dawson on that subcommittee, it's coming in from, outside the box. We've been talking about that for a number of years. So I think part of the game, whether it's trifecta being by Democrats or Republicans, and in those cases, that's when the controlling party is the least responsive, because they don't have to really talk to anybody. They've got the votes and they can, ramrod it through. But the reality is putting those ideas, whether it's alternative revenue for local governments, whether it's, a better, growth factor within the mental health formula, those pieces are, you put the information out there. It can be disregarded this year, come back, knock again next year. And, and I think, the pressure's going to come on because, like Gary said, we were able to delay some of the implementation by a year, which then, as you all know, because you're in the political world as well, sometimes you have to say, okay, we will leave that battle for another day. And so we got some things here. Certainly overall, most of us, Gary and I, League of Cities, State Association of Counties, mental health regions, all these groups walked away with real mixed feelings, a general sense of having lost more than we gained. But we made some progress on some things that we've been working on for a long, long time. And so I think your point is valid, but I think the way we keep playing the system is that there will not always be a trifecta on the Republican side. Iowa historically tends to be a mixed deal.
7 years now.
It's been a long 7 years for some of us, yeah.
6 or 7, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, but the reality is that, we also, were lobbying back in that 4-year period where the Democrats had trifecta. And some of our best friends back then were kind of hard to deal with on some issues as well. So, I mean, it's, you're always, so anyway, my point is.
Easy game, I can get that.
The mixed, and that's our goal, is having mixed government, because that's when people have to talk to each other, negotiate, and some things automatically go off the table on both sides. So, anyway, long answer here, but I wanted to kind of touch on some of those points.
And for me, it isn't, I'm not asking you, and it's not your role, and you're not doing this, you're not mixing government. You are, I see you as a tool, okay?
Right.
What are you doing to help me be a better supervisor, to help me be good at the job that the citizens have hired me to do? And are you an effective part of that? Do you make me a better supervisor? Yes. You give me the context. You are very responsive to phone calls. I can't not imagine having this organization assist me for the job that I've been asked both to do by citizens, but also by my peers, to sit on the East Central Regional Governing Board. The overlap between the Mental Health Regional Governing Board and Dubuque County is integral. It is tied together. The CEO is our employee. Dr. Ann Cameron, holder of all contracts, she's here in the room. She's our employee. And I look at who uses this organization as a resource, and they're here in the boardroom. Ed Raber, every meeting, writing summary memos. The auditor and all the other groups you belong to. Stella Rundy, the budget director, on following. And Harley, you've been on those meetings, step by step, to be listening and learning. Do we like the results? The voters have chosen the people who are making those decisions, not us. We're talking about the state government function here. But I do get calls from representatives who say, well, what do you think about this, Ann? And I'm like, I don't even know the context. And then I put the phone down and I call Gary or Larry and I say, I don't know, I've been doing this a few years. The bottle bill, tell me about the bottle bill. So it's a communication piece. Without
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
I can't be without, we can't step back.
But you're registered lobbyists, right? Yes, registered lobbyists. So that's the differentiation point. Everything you agreed with, I agree with. But now you're dealing with a registered lobbyist whose job and identification is to influence and to lobby on behalf of their constituents, that'd be us, to elected officials.
And they are doing that. You're disappointed with the result, and I'm saying they've done that well.
The result is one piece of it. I think they have difficulties controlling the result. The registered lobbyist piece that's the entanglement and the difficulties I think we should separate ourselves from. If we would pay Larry, Gary, and Megan, their wonderful firm, the amount we pay them for the knowledge and the information they give us,
$25,000.
I think there's value there. The entanglement between the political components of the coalition and the entanglements between the board, and not saying that mean, because I think if you looked at us, you wouldn't know who's who, because half the time those two vote together, and then we vote together, and then Carly and I vote together. That's been 7 months so far. I think we've been fair and equitable, and I don't think we have a speed dial to our party headquarters, right? But that's not the case in Des Moines.
It's about the people, Jay. It's not about my personal beliefs.
Exactly.
It's about the people. But that's where you're wrong with saying you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, whatever. This shouldn't even have that in line.
But it does with those guys. What they do is clearly in line with that.
We're doing it for the people here. They're helping us get
And that's what they're doing there. The only person bringing politics and R&D is you, Jay.
No, they're registered lobbyists. That's what they do for a living.
But they speak to everyone.
We do have relationships across both. Larry has relationships with Republicans. I have them with Democrats. I'm the registered.
You're clearly not the problem, okay?
But
you guys aren't the problem. I'm not saying you're the problem. The problem exists in Des Moines with our partisan, and I'm saying, why should we get in the middle of that?
Sure.
That's my thought. Why should we get in the middle of that when we value education, we value communication, we value information? Do we have to pay registered lobbyists to get that? That's my question to my colleagues.
Certainly there are ways to do that without. One of the things I think that we have built into the Urban County Coalition as kind of a safeguard against that is the veto power of any one particular county. Because we understand that you're all member of organizations, whether they be party organizations, whether they be professional organizations, what have you. And there are inherent sort of difficulties with being associated with an organization that advocates policies that you do not agree with. One of the safeguards that I think we've built into the Urban County Coalition that prevents that to a large degree and has caused, and I'm sure Ann as a representative can tell you that's caused some significant difficulties with members of the Urban County Coalition, is that any one member can veto a particular course of action. So all of the decisions have to be unanimous. So because we realize that as elected officials, whether you're Republican or whether you're Democrats, it doesn't really matter. As a member of this organization, what you could be asked to do is defend a position that an Urban County Coalition has taken, whether that be with a legislator or a constituent. So I think that it doesn't mitigate all positions. It doesn't mitigate everything that could possibly come up, but to a great degree, it certainly does. And I think I'll let Ann sort of jump in here if you want to, that we've had lots of spirited discussions in the Urban County Coalition about things that some counties feel very passionately about, that other counties either feel the opposite way or just simply don't care enough about to advocate.
True.
So, and it does happen. I mean, there are, just like there are political differences between Democrats and Republicans, there are significant inter-party difficulties between both Republicans. I mean, we all know, I mean, being involved with party organizations, that neither party is very hegemonous. I'm mispronouncing it, but especially in especially today.
Right.
I mean, I think you're seeing extremes in both parties, moderates in both parties, and just sort of on the fringes of both parties. Then, unfortunately, what you end up seeing, what ends up getting more grease, is the squeaky wheel. So,
but the problem is, more people are inclined to, that doesn't affect me, so
right.
Let's deal with this, and where it's a big issue to you and her, it's nothing to us. So we're over here working on something else and letting you sit.
Right. But that's why we create the additional issues, and the priorities are set with full input from this board at every local level to look at them. I think when we usually have that conversation, I'll just speak for myself, I take it quite seriously, as you know, and come prepared to try to place things into the priorities that help this county move forward.
Right.
So I'm better at my job. And the communication going back has really very little to do. You report, it passed, it didn't, this is still there. It is conversation. It isn't, I need your help to move forward on these priorities that are transparent and that they serve the interests of Dubuque County citizens. And I need your help to do that. And in a capacity as a lobbying firm, is I need you to make those phone calls and to be present and to testify. And that's not something that can be done just by hiring education. You need to have someone who's advocating on behalf of your interests when we can't be there. That, to me, that is the second piece. And I value that regardless of what coat I wear. It helps the county be better informed, and it helps supervisor who wishes to be engaged during that time of the year on those issues to be better informed. It's just that simple for me.
And I'd like to torture your analogy for a bit here about the weatherman. Not altogether incorrect. I'll grant you that.
The love part?
No. About not being not being able to do anything about the weather. Where we might differ from a weatherman, and whether or not you decide to continue with the Urban County Coalition, we'd certainly like you to do that. But whether or not you decide it, I think the value in having someone advocate for you is that, unlike a weatherman, we may not be able to do anything about the weather. The weatherman can't prevent a tornado from destroying your whole property. We might, at the state legislature, be able to prevent it from destroying your house and just get your barn. So, and unfortunately, sometimes that's a victory.
And I think a couple points I just want to make. And I think as Gary said, we certainly would like to have Dubuque County continue. History, and Gary's always giving me grief being the old guy bringing history in, but the Urban County Coalition was formed primarily because these eastern Iowa counties did not have a presence in Des Moines. Polk County had a presence in Des Moines, both lobbyists and the capital right there. And so whenever anything was done, Polk County was carved out and had something done special for them. And even though the urban counties in eastern Iowa, where 2/3 of the Iowa population is located, they may or may not get any benefit from those carve-outs for Polk County. So when we actually put the coalition together back, I think it was around 08, 09, but that was part of the rationale was we needed to have a political, and I don't mean DR, a political counterweight in Des Moines to the Polk County piece. And Polk County has talked to us periodically, why aren't we in the Urban County Coalition? And the reason is because you all have needs that are unique to urban areas that are not unique to Polk County. And so that's really what drove it. And I think when you talk about being better supervisors, there's some cross-pollination that takes place. And actually, it goes back to when Jay first came on the board, and we were visiting with him at that time about return on investment. And just share a story that the policy directors would periodically compare notes, this sort of thing, in those discussions. And it was discovered way back that Dubuque County had not been seeking the reimbursement for the DHS administrative cost, which is like 33 or 38% of the total expended. And so, you know, when Jay was brand new at the time, and he said, so what's the return on investment? That fix, which suddenly allowed Dubuque County to go ahead and recover that administrative cost, was worth about somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, which goes forward. Our contract, you know, is $25,000 a year. So you've been making money, if nothing else, for just that one interaction. And there's others like that where you kind of, you know, what's best practice going on within the urban counties, because of many things that's happened over the last 25, 30 years legislatively have changed things for urban counties that does not impact the rural counties. And so it's unique needs. So that's really the history behind why and I think that's why, and I share your frustration, because back, you know, I was in the legislature from 84 to 96. Back then, you had a lot of cross the aisle work. Some of your best political friends were the other party. But that has changed. But I'm also an optimist that I think eventually it will gravitate back. And part of how we do that is our presence there, where we keep educating. And that's a challenge for Gary and I, and it's also your challenge, is that the turnover in the legislature is so routine now that it's a constant education program on them, because they get elected and unless they came out of local government, they truly don't understand at all, even how the property tax system works, you know, your budget, what your funds are, this sort of thing. And so part of our job is a constant education of new legislators, and that's where the relationship building is critical, because they've got to trust us that if, you know, even though they may not vote with us all the time, that the information we're giving them is credible. So,
and whatever you decide to do, one of the things I would encourage you to do is maintain the relationships, and whatever you can do to better the relationships with your local legislative delegation, please do that, because lobbyists can't do it regardless of whether or not you're a member of the Urban County Coalition, or you hire a lobbyist or you don't. You're going to need those relationships, because a lot of the times we would prefer them to call you rather than get the information from us, because you are the ones that live in the same community they do. So your relationship with them means a lot. So regardless of what you decide to do, please, going forward, make sure you do what you can to improve or increase those relationships with your local legislative delegation.
thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
As always,
Thank you very
please
much,
feel
Larry.
free to call Larry, Megan, or myself whenever you guys have a question. We rarely ever sleep, and we never take vacations, so.
You do always answer the phone, Gary and Larry, so very good.
So,
Well,
yeah, and 10 o'clock, Jay, come on now, you should have been in bed. The night we were talking about, I think it was closing down county government.
Oh, yeah.
You did, I can tell.
I'd prefer not to go back to the early pandemic.
I can tell you during the early pandemic, Jay didn't sleep a whole lot, which was unfortunate.
Well, and in fairness, what the pandemic did to you all, no one truly understands or appreciates the stress that you are all under. I mean, because, you know, the traditional issues that you all deal with, there was so much superimposed, and then certainly the relationship or lack of it with state government, and, you know, in terms of how you were supposed to operate this way, you know, at the local level. So, I mean, you deserve, and you won't get any credit for it, but you do deserve thanks for being supervisors through a 1-in-100-year event.
Yeah. So thank you all. And Jay, in your defense, that was not the latest phone call I've ever taken, so don't worry about it.
I know.
thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
to see you both.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you, Larry.
John?
Right. Do we have more discussion that we wish to have about the resolution that we tabled, which is to fund our participation in the Urban County Coalition. There's a resolution that would need a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement. It does come at a $25,000 a year cost. It is for 1 year's time.
Just a couple of final comments. For me, it's not about the dollar amount. It's, you know, for a county that's has a budget over $70 million, the $25,000 is not a make or break. Every dollar is important, but it's not a make or break. It's not about the dollar amount. It's also not about the value that it provides supervisors and or our staff. It's really, is it the right positioning and the right value for all the citizens and all the voters? And that's where I have trouble with it. And I have from the day one. They can ask you when they were here the first time, and I was a freshman board of supervisors, or what the term is, but I was new, and I'm like, why are we paying for lobbyists? I didn't think government could do that, and I didn't think we should do that. So from day one, I was a little concerned, and I just think I've reached a point, at least, that I don't see that value for the citizens, and I see it as an entanglement, and I see it only getting worse. And so for that reason, I'll be voting no.
Obviously, being the freshman, they have been very instrumental for me, getting me up to speed on a lot of stuff. The $25,000, I think, is a cheap investment into giving us the insight of what's going on, and I just think it's a good investment. I mean, I understand your point with the Democrat and Republican, yada, yada, but I personally think it's about the people, and I think keeping us informed and on top of what's going on is a benefit to the people. So I would be making a motion to approve the resolution for the Urban County Coalition.
I will second that motion. Is there further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Thank you very much. That motion carries.
Thank you for waiting to have those two here. That was helpful. We were going to, as opposed to voting it last week.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Well, if anyone's hesitant ever, it's good to have them be here. The last item on our agenda is if we have time for any brief boards and commissions updates.
It's a short week for me, so I do have nothing to report.
Yeah, DMATs, I thought that was interesting that our, so Jay and I are on DMATs, Dubuque Metropolitan Transportation Area, and the Heritage Trail, the paving of Heritage Trail, that grant moved forward with approval from that organization, so it's being submitted to
The application.
yes, the application.
Application, yep.
Right. So that would be nice if that happened, so that was good.
Significant.
It's interesting on that board to see that Jim Merton is present and Wayne Kennecker. So they have included Piasta, and then Wayne Kennecker as Sageville's mayor is the proxy. So he typically attends too, but I think it's interesting to see the city of Piasta become more and more engaged in that transportation study group too, with the issues that they're having out there. So I found that noteworthy. Annual meeting of Greater Dubuque Development Corporation was last week someday.
Thursday night, I think, wasn't it?
I think nobody can remember.
I think it was Thursday.
But that was good, and the new chair is Tim Hodge, so that will be good to know. It was fun to be there with people. Also, still continues to be very strange to be with lots of folks. And then the health board is the other piece that you saw in the paper, that they took formal action against the incident management team's proposal for a lottery style based on how that was designed. So there's that. Good discussion there about what other possibilities might exist. How do you keep incentives, what other incentives might be, what other programs are there, how do we keep vaccination rates moving upward? Dr. Schultz said the mark has to be high and there's urgency. So, that's, I think, just kind of a brief summary of his thoughts. The woman who was speaking earlier, Dr. Schultz, did present a proposal that's in the school lane, if I were gonna say who's gonna do what, whose responsibility would it be, but it was might the Board of Health be working with the school district to do vaccination clinics inside the schools? So I don't know that that's something we would be, I don't know what role that would be for us
I don't think that would
as supervisors.
come to us, but I took it as Dr. Schultz just throwing an idea out,
Yep.
not
Yep.
saying that this is what we're gonna try to push for. I think it was just trying to think outside the box and throwing
Right.
something out there, and I think it kind of took off on the wrong foot, but.
But if you weren't at that meeting, Colin Dolphin from the Health Department gave a great update about the grants to counties and the water, the well systems, and it was well done. He did a great job informing everyone about that. Adam Hoffman, of course, had questions. They're working together, I think, somewhat to look at completing. They didn't quite pull down all the funds. They left some money on the table. But in a COVID year, I think they only left $4,000 on the table, so that's not bad. So, I don't know if there was anything. Patrice presented a large, her ideas about the rescue plan dollars. And, I think you probably saw that. That was presented to you in a memo format. Nothing new there. I know that they are, the chair and the vice chair and Patrice and Samantha are going to be doing some visiting of other counties. I said, well, you're gonna take your whole board? You're gonna take your whole board? Well, probably not. So there might be some work for Ed to be involved in that as well.
During the meeting, email from ECIA, Caitlin wanted to know if any of you would be attending the mayor's meeting. That's on Thursday evening.
Thursday evening.
And, for food, they just wanted to know who was gonna show.
I have a conservation meeting at 4, so I may attend if time allows, but I won't be eating.
Okay.
And you're attending, right, Harley?
I was figuring on that.
Okay, great. That's what
Could
we'll
you
get.
respond to Caitlin and let her know that, our county engineer, Anthony Barchette, is going to attend
Yes.
the meeting? He's just to be for dinner and conversation, to be present about some roads discussion that was happening last
It's
month.
out of Piastra, right?
Asbury.
In Piasta, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's in Piasta? Okay.
That's great. I'll let her know.
Last month.
And then, yeah, I think the only other board and commission update, to go on a bit is with the mental health board, the work that Hillcrest has been, doing on getting an access point accessible, and they have something that could just about open its doors, I think, and be ready to go. So, and Harley, you're attending a meeting this week to move forward on that, right?
Thursday morning, right? And at 8:30, yeah.
Okay. So if you want to, I think you'll probably see the facility.
Yeah.
And then Jay, if you want to have a chance to walk through so we're all aware, of at least, what does it look like? What's the service look like? What are their thoughts about it? It would be helpful. We'd all be visualizing the same thing. I think that would help conversation move forward, so. But is there anything else from the board?
I had a quiet week while I was at the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation annual meeting. That was, good, and other than that,
Been in the news. You're the spokesperson for the Metropolitan, the waste, for the.
Oh, well, I mentioned that last week about the compost thing, which I'm gonna bring up at the mayor's meeting. Hopefully we got mayors interested in it.
Good.
Should all be aware of it now, so.
Good stuff. All right, so we will meet again on next Monday at 9 a.m. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.